Reform will come to order. As a reminder, pursuant to Committee Rule 5B and House Rule 11-2H4, the Chair announces that he may postpone further proceedings today on any question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote of the yeas and nays are recorded. And without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. This is a continuation of the January 31st, 2017 business meeting. Prior to recessing on January 31st, we were considering the committee's authorization and oversight plan and made it through all the amendments except for one amendment by Mr. Conley, where we were working mutually on language for an amendment that both the Chair could support as well as Mr. Conley. It's my understanding that we have language now, so I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley, for the purpose of offering his amendment to authorize the oversight plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a revised text, I think, at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Do we have the revised text? Do you want me to read it while we're waiting? And then the clerk can confirm what I said. Mr. Chairman, forgive me, I thought it was at the desk, but our staffs have been working in common language. After the section entitled Homeland Security, at the end of the section,
The gentleman will suspend for a moment. Let's do this in the proper order. Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment to the Authorization and Oversight Plan of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, offered by Mr. Conley of Virginia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley, is recognized for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, we had this discussion at our earlier markup, and I think you indicated an openness to its consideration. With respect to the committee's oversight on executive orders, we both recognize that this is not a partisan issue. Concerns that were raised in the previous administration and already in this one, and that it is a legitimate course of examination by this committee to retain oversight on executive orders in general. Your staff were helpful in adding some language to clarify what our intent is. This has been worked out on both sides, and Mr. Chairman, I would move its approval.
I thank the gentleman. I think this is appropriate language. I would encourage its adoption, and I would yield back. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Hearing no other discussion on the amendment, the question is now on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and your staff for your cooperation, and the ranking member and our minority staff for theirs.
Thank you. The committee will now vote on previously postponed questions, beginning with the committee's authorization and oversight plan for the 115th Congress. The vote will occur on the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay's amendment to the committee's authorization and oversight plan for the 115th Congress. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chaffetz?
No.
Mr. Chaffetz votes no. Mr. Duncan? Mr. Duncan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Sanford? Mr. Sanford votes no. Mr. Amash? Mr. Amash votes no. Mr. Gosar? Mr. Desjardins? Mr. Desjardins votes no. Mr. Gowdy? Mr. Farenthold? Ms. Fox? Mr. Massey? No. Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Meadows? Mr. Meadows votes no. Mr. DeSantis? Mr. Ross? Mr. Ross votes no. Mr. Walker? Mr. Blum? Mr. Blum votes no. Mr. Heiss? Mr. Heiss votes no. Mr. Russell? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Hurd? Mr. Palmer? Mr. Comer? Mr. Comer votes no. Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell votes no. Mr. Cummings? Mr. Cummings votes yes. Ms. Maloney? Ms. Norton? Ms. Norton votes yes. Mr. Clay? Mr. Clay votes yes. Mr. Lynch? Mr. Lynch votes yes. Mr. Cooper? Mr. Connolly?
Aye.
Mr. Connolly votes yes. Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly votes yes. Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Watson-Coleman? Ms. Plaskett? Ms. Demings? Mr. Krishnamurthy?
Yes.
Mr. Krishnamurthy votes yes. Mr. Raskin?
Yes.
Mr. Raskin votes yes.
Have all members who wish to be
Am
recorded...
I
been
recorded?
You are not recorded. Ms. Demings votes yes.
Have all members who wish to be recorded been recorded? I think we have one more. Hold on for a moment.
Yes.
Gentleman, Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper votes yes.
Good. The clerk will report the tally.
On this vote, there are 10 yeas and 15 nays.
The noes have it, the amendment is not agreed to. For advisement, we have a vote on the floor. So let's do one more amendment vote, then we will go into recess, so members have adequate time to get to the floor for the votes. At the conclusion of the votes on the floor, we will immediately begin on the rest of the amendment votes and the passage of the oversight plan. The next, the vote will occur on the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch's amendment to the committee's authorization and oversight plan for the 115th Congress. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chaffetz?
No.
Mr. Chaffetz votes no. Mr. Duncan? No. Mr. Duncan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Sanford? Mr. Sanford votes no. Mr. Amash? Mr. Amash votes no. Mr. Gosar? Mr. Desjardins? Mr. Desjardins votes no. Mr. Gowdy? Mr. Farenthold? Ms. Fox? Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Meadows? Mr. Meadows votes no. Mr. DeSantis? Mr. Ross? Mr. Ross votes no. Mr. Walker? Mr. Blum? Mr. Blum votes no. Mr. Heiss? Mr. Heiss votes no. Mr. Russell? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Hurd? Mr. Palmer? Mr. Palmer votes no. Mr. Comer? Mr. Comer votes no. Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell votes no. Mr. Cummings? Mr. Cummings votes yes. Ms. Maloney? Ms. Norton? Ms. Norton votes yes. Mr. Clay? Mr. Clay votes yes. Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch votes yes. Mr. Cooper?
Aye.
Mr. Cooper votes yes. Mr. Connolly?
Aye.
Mr. Connolly votes yes. Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly votes yes. Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Watson-Coleman? Ms. Plaskett? Ms. Demings? Ms. Demings votes yes. Mr. Krishnamurthy? Mr. Krishnamurthy votes yes. Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes yes.
Have all members who wish to be recorded been recorded? Clerk will report the tally.
On this vote, there are 10 yeas and 16 nays.
The noes have it, the amendment is not agreed to. Without objection, the committee stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair. The committee stands in recess.